it's a real pleasure to have Peter Scott here from the Open University. He's the director of the Knowledge Media Institute. Did I say it right? Knowledge Media Institute, so, which is a very exciting part of the Open University. There are about 100 people doing cool things, as Peter himself says. So they are responsible for advancing the state of the art in adopting new technologies for improving education. I visited him recently in January, and they're doing very exciting things. So therefore, I'm very glad that you could make the time to come and give a talk. Thank you very much, Peter.
Okay, so in fact I do have if you're recording it, I could set a challenge to the camera of watching me wander around, but perhaps I'll sit here for a minute. Hi. So I'm director of a small institute in the Open University. We have perhaps 100 people working on new technology and new concepts for learning. One of the things there are a lot of things that I'm not terribly interested in. So I'm actually not terribly interested in the thing that you're probably most interested in, which is how most universities do higher education. My university doesn't do higher education the way you guys probably do higher education. We spend a lot of time trying to design educational experiences very specifically for the learner who isn't in the classroom. And we spend quite a lot of time thinking about the learner who can't afford the way that we in the West do higher education. So in doing those sorts of design, we're very interested in tracking the nature of new technologies and how new technologies will work for us. I like to kick off with a fun demo, which isn't necessarily anything to do with my talk. So I'll do that. So why don't I get that bit over with now? So this is nothing.
We use the gravity measurements to work out where and how much new magma and gas are accumulating beneath the craters.
So this is a gig
and our
we
plant
did in
and soil surveys
2010.
help us to identify where the major environmental impacts
This
are.
woman is
The
one of the world's experts on volcanoes.
How and on what timescales
So whenever
changes within
anything
the volcano
blows up in the
affect
world,
local
she's
environment
typically
and the
there
people who live here.
explaining why it did it.
This research is funded by the Open University and Earthwatch.
We take
students
these
and
people
Earthwatch
who are Open
volunteers work
University
together
students
to help
to a
us
variety of
collect the
different
data we need.
volcanoes, and they
Without
measure
their
things.
help, we wouldn't be able to
Currently
make all
what
these
she's doing is
measurements.
she's
Some students
uncovering
use the
a
field
gravity
experience as
meter.
part of their project work
One of the
for their
coolest
Open
things you can do
University
when you're
degree.
trying to think about changes underneath the Earth is to use changes in gravity, and yes, gravity does change, to try and figure out what's going on underneath. What's the magma doing under your feet? Changes in gravity do that for you. So the last time these guys went to the volcano, they took a bunch of iPhones with them, because oddly enough, this volcano in Nicaragua has reasonably good cell coverage, because part of one of the themes of my talk today, of course, is about the flood of immersive technologies and the changes in the nature of those technologies. So when these guys were out there, one of the things we got them to do was to use their iPhones to share the gravity readings. Normally what they'd do is they'd write it down on a piece of paper, and they'd wander back to their various huts around the caldera of the volcano, and they would plot those measurements, and then they'd come together in the evenings and share that. We showed them how they could record all of that data on their iPhones, which were all in their pockets anyway, and whilst they were recording that data, they could make notes about it, and then using very simple sharing, they could share the data with each other as they were recording it, and they could visualize it. So they could actually use AR, which I know Fred is going to talk about tomorrow. Very simple augmented reality. You lift the phone up, it knows more or less where you are, it knows more or less where you're looking, so it can plot some of the data as you're recording it around the caldera, and you can see everybody else's measurements popping up. And you can see, effectively, a map of what's going on with the magma under your feet as you're walking around this thing that is prone to explode, which is quite exciting for the scientists. Now, I put this up as a good example of a piece of technology that is really, really a cool demo, but it's not really very interesting. It is, as in a sense, it is merely technology doing something that technology does very well, and we're putting it together in quite a clever way, and that is nice. It's an incredibly nice use of all of the sensible things you want to do when you're designing a field experimental experience. And you need to figure out how to do that well, and Fred's going to tell you tomorrow how to do that. What I'm interested in is actually something a lot more boring, actually. I think sometimes the much more boring things turn out to be really, really important in the long run. So I'm going to show you some of the really boring things we're doing and explain to you why I think they're important. Okay, so bear with me for a little while. I'm going to be arguing that the future of learning is this absolutely learning 2.0 thing. It's all about being open, social, producing high-quality resources, having those sourced by the community, your students producing as much as you do, and then sharing all of that. And the most dangerous thing about it in your future and mine is that an awful lot of that will be completely free. And if it's high quality and completely free, why are you locking students into your lecture rooms, and why are you charging them so much money and incurring so much national debt to do it? I know we are, and I guess you are too. Most of the world can't afford to do that, so one of the things that we're doing is trying to design experiences that make that incredibly scary and actually pretty much free. I know that you guys are all working on incredibly interesting Learning 2 sorts of things, and I'm going to skip over some of those because I think you'll hear a lot about them over the next 2 days. So I know you're doing cool stuff in assessment. Obviously, we're doing lots of stuff in assessment. You've got assessment wizards that are trying to help students rethink through how they know what they know, and you measure that. You want to measure it because you want to give them a little badge which says they've passed. They accumulate those badges, you give them a credit, and eventually they become students that you're proud of in your various institutions. Yeah, we're doing a lot of that too. It's really quite nice. It's not my phone. But it's nice to know you guys are all switched on and seeing things happening. And if you say something really, really rude, please tell me so I can read it. I can work out Spanish a bit. Obviously, you're all doing live stuff with mentoring. You're obviously bringing your students all together in various spaces. We do an awful lot of that because our students can't come to lecture rooms particularly, and we wouldn't want to lecture to them anyway. So we get groups of students working together to solve problems and working with mentors to solve problems. We don't have any lecturers, we just have mentors. Their job is to help you learn. They bring all of your work together, and we put them into virtual spaces, of course, as I'm sure you do, and we play with how those concepts work together. And of course, I know you're all working in social spaces too, because nobody these days wants to learn on their own. How can you do that? It makes no sense. You want to learn with a group of people. And here, the bottom picture on the slide is one of our Halloween parties in Second Life. Yes, it's incredibly fun to do. Yes, it's a nice trick. No, it's not very important, but it's Second Life, and people do a lot of game stuff, and we're kind of used to it, and I think it's so unimportant I'm going to skip over it, but I know you're doing lots of that stuff, and I don't mean to say it's not important for you to do, but I don't think it's critical in terms of making a change for the world. So let's kind of crack on to what is. High-quality content, I'm sure you're also doing. If you're recording this, you're recording a reasonably low-quality guy talking in front of you in the dark, and you'll try to do the best you can with that while I ramble through some thoughts. We do those sorts of things as well, but we try to do them much more filmically and much more to pedagogical design. So years ago, 3-4 years ago, when we went into iTunes U for the first time, we started to put all of our materials into iTunes, and we started to accumulate an awful lot of albums of materials of all of our content. And I know you guys will be doing that too, and patching it together in experiences for your student and making it available to them. I'll show you a bit about how we do that as well, because it's a bit boring, but I think it's interesting. What I'm actually going to do is talk a bit about some of our experiences in doing a few of the newer type things that I think you guys should know about. I'm also, for my sins, coordinator of the Stellar Network. It's the network of excellence in technology and health learning, and our kind of final report is coming out soon, and I know you guys will want to read it, so I thought I'd put a picture of it up there. And I pick out 3 key themes that are part of this moderately boring world that I want to explain to you, that actually is so boring, it's going to make a difference. One is a trend around linked data. What's happening with artificial intelligence is it's starting to mutate into something genuinely useful. For 40 years, artificial intelligence research has promised us the Earth, the Moon, and the stars, and delivered not very much at all. Now it's promising relatively little. All it's promising to do is to take linked sources of data that are sitting out there in databases and provide a filter to connect them to other sources of data. That's so simple that it turns out to be incredibly important, because you're now able to integrate any sources of data between all of the different data systems that you own with others' sources of data and add a semantic layer in between those. And that's what we call linked data. My university was the first in the UK to release all of its data sources of public data as linked data that can be interrogated by other things. The reason that's important, by the way, and this is not my talk, so I'll skip over it quickly, the reason it's important is it allows you to stop doing the most stupid thing you currently do and do something smart. The most stupid thing you currently do is you search for things. Okay? Now, you don't know why that's stupid, maybe, because you do it a lot. But it is stupid because you don't want to search for things. You search for things because you have to. What you want to do is ask questions of the world and have answers. But you can't do that. So you have to search and find things that are like the sorts of things that look like the sorts of things you think you're asking about. Linked data promises you the ability to get past search and move to question answering. So that's going to be spectacularly cool in the years to come. Second piece is analytics. Now, I know you know why this is important, because a lot of the people that Carlos was citing at the beginning are now looking very hard at analytics. That's about measuring the activity that everyone's doing. Since what you do is now online, and since what you do is now inspectable by the various systems that store data about you, that means you could, if you wanted to, and sometimes you can't stop it, put those sources of data together to measure some of your activity. When the people who are doing all of that integrating are teachers, learners, and universities, and the people that are doing it about our students, we call it learning analytics, and it tells us quite a lot about what students need to know. So, for example, in my university, we have a pretty good idea when we need to touch a remote student in order to get that student to finish their first assignment. And in my university, finishing your first assignment is really very important, because you're not in a lecture theater, you're hard to track, and if you finish your first assignment, you're much more likely to sit your first exam. And for us, that's an incredibly important thing. So we know the right time to pick up the phone, to call you and talk about anything. It doesn't matter what we talk about. We can talk about the weather, but we need to touch you at that certain point. Actually, it's about 3 weeks into your course, on a Tuesday. I'm joking. But if we touch you at a certain time, you're much more likely to finish your first assignment. If you finish your first assignment, also the data tells us you'll go and sit your first exam. If you sit your first exam, you're much more likely to turn up at your second course. So analytics tell you something about that. It's terribly frightening. I know the European Union's working very hard on making sure that you get more security and more ability to control the data that you should own. But nevertheless, we have it already. It's already there. Already everything you do is pretty much inspectable online. If we can put it together in clever ways, we get an analytic view of who you are. But my talk today, and I do have plenty of time still, is about the last one of those, which is actually pretty boring. It's so boring that most of you don't think it's very interesting particularly, and that's about moving past the personal computer. Now, we've got very used to these pieces of equipment sitting in front of us, and we kind of think, because people are like that, people are used to inertia, we kind of think that the world always stays the same, because it would be so much nicer if it did. So we've got personal computers, they've got keyboards, they've got screens, they've got a mouse, and we think that's always going to be there. And actually, we kind of know it isn't going to be there. Actually, there is a mouse here, but you don't need it. It's got a trackpad. So the mouse, what the hell is that for? Cross-personal computing is a term coined by Apple to try and make them distinct from Microsoft and now Intel, to say, actually, maybe you don't even need a keyboard. Maybe, in fact, you don't even need to touch anything. Maybe, they're saying at the minute, you can just talk to things. Maybe you don't have to search. Maybe you should ask questions. Maybe there's a way to make all of these things that we consider to be computing devices not computing devices anymore. Maybe they're past the personal, maybe they're past the personal computer and into a device that you don't even recognize as a computer. I was having a really interesting conversation with a group in who are looking at helping Indian slum children to learn. And they're saying, computers are so expensive. It's so difficult to get a decent computer into the hands of a slum child. But actually, they already have computers. They all have quite sophisticated computers, because quite a lot of them can access mobile phones. Now, the computers in their mobile phones are not very clever, but they're getting cleverer and cleverer. And actually, I've got an incredibly powerful computer that's stupidly overpriced. It's stupidly overpriced, but it'll get a lot cheaper. And that's a very powerful computer. I carry it around with me all the time, and it's almost invisible to me. And as soon as the technology becomes genuinely visible, we're in a very interesting world. So I could wander around and control this slideshow. That's a dumb trick, though. I'll go back. Okay. I could make an argument about why that's important, but I kind of think I just have, so I won't waste time explaining this bit. But assuming my English is okay and you're okay keeping up, then I'll pause briefly for you to read this slide and move on. Let me give you an example. I said I wasn't going to show you any cool demos after the first one, and I was only going to show you boring stuff, but that was, of course, a horrible lie. This is, in fact, I like this the best, not because of what it's about, but because it's what it says to me about post-personal computing.
Hi, Andy.
Hi, Simon.
How are you getting on with that moon rock?
Okay, well, I'm having problems identifying the olivine.
Okay. Let's take a look at it together.
So I'm going to stop there because I think I'm worried you'll have missed the point. So I'm going to belabor the point and explain it to you. Now, the guy was talking about some rock, right? He's a geologist. We have a lot of geologists hanging around the campus. So he wants to talk to a student about his rock. So the thing that I love about this is not the demo.
Hi, Andy.
It's the fact that he's sitting at his desk surrounded by all of that computing garbage.
Okay, well,
look around him at all of the junk that's on his desk. Do you have that junk on your desk? And he's interacting completely with a little slab of glass.
I'll take control.
Surrounded by plastic.
There are quite a few olivines. They're quite
desk.
small, and they're embedded in the peroxide.
Now this is a little demo we did.
Let's move across
about a year or so ago.
Rotation. In fact,
using
even
very simple game technology.
Like
it's game technology only because it's sharing
take
things
control
live.
And go into that rotation.
It's a concept demo, right? But actually, it all works.
There,
it's real.
Peroxine's gone into extinction.
It just works using Apple's game
technology. The yellow
technology.
crystal's olivine.
Yeah.
But how do I know it's not a pyroxene?
It's the cleavage. You can see the cleavage
Turns
of the pyroxene. It's got
all
long,
about cleavage.
straight cleavage, and the olivine has that rounded shape and no cleavage. You can see.
Yeah, I'll shut him up now. I'll go back to finish this bit. Okay. It's all about cleavage, as it turns out, if you're a geologist looking at mineral crystals on your iPad. So the thing I liked about that is that it's all about very personal relationship. He's talking to students. It's using game technology, so you can only talk to 4 students at a time, which for us is no good. So the reason we haven't built that into production is that it's no good. 4 students is not enough for us. I need a minimum of 20 to get it to work, and I haven't got it to work yet at 20. But the concept demo for 4 students is fine. Everything works fine. It's just using a simple game technology which Apple originally designed to allow small children to race each other in cars. Because it shares data very quickly. That's why the game technology is interesting. It's just quick sharing of data, sharing state so that you can keep you all together. In this case, he's sharing the state in order to control what goes on the screen in various places. He just wants to be able to manage the slices of the mineral, move in down through the layers of the mineral, identify something, move it, because if you're working with slices in this mineral world, you need to be able to move the sample under the microscope in order to show what happens under polarizing light. Okay, so quite a nice example of doing that. We do this all the time anyway, but it works beautifully on a nice invisible piece of technology, and you get audio for free because it's built into the playing of the game. So who cares? So you can see why it matters to me, because I absolutely need that. My students are all remote anyway. They've all got tablets anyway, because they're cheap simple technologies. And if they haven't got them today, they'll have them very, very soon. They'll be moving past all of the keyboards and things that we currently burden them with, and they'll be able to interact with each other in quite nice ways with these sorts of things, and they'll be able to talk to us in nice ways. My students definitely want this. Do your students want to do this? Actually, the evidence is, of course, they do. We have reasonably good survey data, at least in the UK, that most of the students sitting in banked auditoriums and spaces like this find them reasonably poor experiences. And you need to make sure that you're pushing those learning designs much further than you currently are beyond the lecture into much more flexible spaces. Not only are students saying this is going to be true, but actually it's reasonably the case that most industry analysts are saying this too. If the world is moving in this direction, I think this is something, it's incredibly boring because it's going to happen anyway, whether you like it or not. The challenge is, what do you do about it in the spaces that you currently control? So, what I'm going to tell you about is, in the time I have left, which is fine, keeping my eye on the time, Carlos. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we do things. I'm going to show you a couple examples of some of the fun new things we're now doing. Mostly fairly simple stuff, but I think it's an experience you'd be interested in. So when we design our learning experiences, we do them not around lecturers, because we don't have any. We design them around the student, trying to think about how we get material to the student in the most effective way. And often that student is an adult studying at home or a slum child in India, in principle. So we think about designing the learning experience around something else other than being able to talk in these sorts of environments for around about an hour, which is what I'm currently doing for you guys. I won't say much about how that design is important, but the thing that's important for me in this is all of the roles of all of the different people that are involved. Because at various times, you, the lecturer, you, the teacher, have to take on all of these roles. We think it's important that you do it professionally, so each of these is a professional in their own discipline, coming in to an interdisciplinary team to make the designs that we create work better.
So I told you this is the new VLE, showcasing the study planner for...
I'm just going to mute that, because you don't need to hear him. This is an engineer actually talking through the latest release of our virtual learning environment, which is Moodle. I guess some of you guys use Moodle? Who uses Moodle? Anybody use Moodle? Oh dear, that's so sad. Yeah, it's the sad, oh God, I'm so sorry, I use Moodle. Moodle is a really nice, simple, light environment. We like it because it's open source. We like it because when we build something, we can give it away and the world can use it. This is a block which lets you into iTunes, which is nice. A lot of our material is locked away inside iTunes. So if you're an Open University student, you can come and get all of your materials in iTunes. Levels 1 and 2, we haven't finished level 3 yet. But there'll be a block inside Moodle which says, actually, you want all your stuff on your iPad, press this button, download that stuff, and listen to that guy talking. So this is I'll let that guy talk. Turn my mic back up.
Hello, welcome to the Open University and to U101 Design Thinking.
Excellent, thank you, Peter. It's a really nice course. Works on your iPhone. It's actually, it's so boring, I hesitate to show it to you, because chances are you do that as well, right? You probably give your material seamlessly and smoothly to your students in beautiful packages so that it works on all of their multiple devices. But actually, because it's so invisible and so lightweight and you don't even particularly think about how cool it is, it's really very cool. It's really, really very cool to be able to sign in and have all of that stuff given to you. The reason we can do all of that stuff in a smooth way is when we design our experiences, we design them around a learning design based in XML. That learning design based in XML is in that big block in the center of that diagram. That allows us to take the XML design and repurpose it very quickly to a variety of different channels. So the stuff that goes into Moodle from us comes first from our design system, which is based around XML, as I said. That means that the same core system that creates the Moodle pages is the same system that can create a range of ebook resources, is the same system that can create stuff for some of your apps, or it can be read aloud to you if you have a hearing impairment and can't hear, and so on. And it can even create documents, and you can then send them to the printer and print them. Why is that cool? Well, imagine you're trying to take some of those learning elements which you would distribute to your students normally in books. You'd normally write books, right? You write books and you give them to your students. You give your students a lot of paper. But if they've got these nice devices in their pockets that you've even forgotten about, it's pretty straightforward to design scripts to automatically produce these sorts of resources. This is one of our free resources, by the way. We give a lot of resources away free, so part of our design is that maybe 5% of all the material we create a free element that we can give away to someone. So this is one of our free books, and it shows how the script translations work from our core content out to all of these different formats. And you need to do a little bit of tweaking on each of them to get them right, because each of the formats is slightly tricky. Mobi is very painful, for example, because you need to go out to HTML and back into Mobi from our format. But they all work fine, actually. They all work fine in a very simple-minded, book-like way. If you want to create books, fine. You don't need to print them anymore. Why would you bother? You've got a nice digital resource that can do that all for you, and you get a very nice book-like experience. Well, actually, you might bother. You might bother to design something smart around the book to break out of the book format. How about moving past the book format and saying, actually, we've got a lot more than text that can now come back together in a reading-like experience. Because if you have it in your pocket anyway, we might as well try and switch it on and make it do something slightly cool. So this is an example of one of our little free blocks. It's called, it's an open learn course. We give this stuff away. We've had many millions of people take the free material and repurpose it. There's a block up there. This is Moodle. You'll recognize Moodle. There's a block up there that encourages you to take it away. Unit content down the bottom says, you can take this, put it into your own system, use it for what you like. So if you want to take all of this material, help yourself, and reuse it for your own purpose. There's a lot of interactions in there. It's Moodle pages. It runs through, and there's some support, of course. It's a website. It's the sort of website you'd use on your PC perfectly nicely. But since it's generated from the same core resource, you could press a button and do something else with it. So this is the same course on my iPad, wrapped, just do the wrapping, as an EPUB. The reason that's cooler is that it fits really nicely when you're designing a learning experience into a book-like thing. So here, I'm studying Schubert's setting of Goethe's poems, and I want to hear some woman singing in German, because his poems were in German. And this is Hein Roslein, and I want to be able to, while I'm reading through and trying to understand the narrative around this, I want to be able to see the score. I could even see the original score as he wrote it, which is what that is. And I've got a lot of argumentative narrative about it, which is what I'm trying to engage in. So actually, you can, when we design our learning experiences, we have a tendency to send our students off to a variety of different places to pull in the various elements. With new, simple designs like books, which are incredibly boring, we can put all of that together and design a much simpler experience for our students. So, we've done about 400 or 500 of those, and they're all available free in iTunes. So you can go to our iTunes U site and download, actually it's about 450 maybe, 450 free books which have all of that stuff woven into the narrative. So that, and these are all generated from our core system. The iTunes releases we've done so far have proved remarkably popular, because actually that fourth thing I told you on the first list there of key things you're going to be doing was high quality content. When you got high quality content, you actually can get it out to the world and have it used quite nicely. So forget the numbers on this slide. The numbers change so quickly that I get very bored of updating them. Just look at the shape. This is there's millions up there, but so we're at, call it 50 million or so. We're at 50 million or so downloads of our material worldwide. The thing that's interesting to me is that that little segment there called United Kingdom is pretty much where all our students are. It's under 9% of our international downloads. If you put the chunks back together that belong together, here I've picked out a few interesting countries. So Spain is in there over to the side in orange. As a relatively small chunk of downloads. There's not that many of you, right? But that's a joke. That was a joke again. So if you put all of these pieces back together, you get around about a third of our downloads go to North America, USA primarily. About a third of our downloads go to Europe. And inside that third is about 9% to the UK. and then a third of it goes into the rest of the world, the emerging spaces in the world who don't yet have a lot of iPads. And in fact, when we released the ebooks, they very quickly hit 1 million because they're quite nice downloads that fit very well to the experience of the device. And when we released our new courses, we're now able to track, Apple now do nice courses. Again, I'm sure you guys do this as well. You're now able to track exactly the iPads that your courses are on, which is nice. So as of last month, we were able to say that one of our best courses, which is called New Entrepreneurs, it's a business course for being entrepreneurial in business. At the end of last month, that was on 140,000 iPads worldwide. Now, the nice thing about that is that that number goes down as well as up. So it shows you at that time. No, it's not just downloads. Downloads is misleading because lots of people download something, think it's interesting, and throw it away. So, for example, some of the MIT X type announcements are hidden behind the announcements of lots of downloads of the fact that actually lots of people have downloaded because they're interested and never go on to do anything else. So we can say with confidence exactly how many iPods our courses are on at any one time. And they're all connected to us by push notification if we want them to be. So it allows you to design cool materials, get them out into the world, and have lots more people than your students consume your work and learn something and do something. The reason that that's really important for us is that a lot of the world can't afford to pay the price of the designs that we create for our learners. So, of course, we're doing a lot of apps. And again, I'm sure Fred will show you some great apps tomorrow that do marvelous things. So this is the microscope on an app. You've kind of seen it already inside the iPad design where we made it shared. It's actually the same as this app, but with sharing switched on. So you go inside the crystal and you go inside the layers of the crystal and so on. The device is right for it. One of the key issues is making something that makes sense for the device, where there's something about the mobility of the device that really makes sense. And here it's doing things with the crystal that you actually can't do with a real microscope, with the slice of mineral. Or in this case, it's trying to learn how to do Chinese. You really need to be able to draw that. It's very hard to learn that proprioceptively with a mouse. But actually, with a stylus or your finger, it's incredibly more rewarding to try to draw the characters. Okay, so I'll now skip on to, you've seen how we're trying to wrap the books into nicer experiences with audio and video. Now what we're thinking is how to embed much more complex experiences into the book-like resource to make it a tad more complex. Apple nicely released a really cool authoring tool for free, which is nice for us because it lets lots of people in the world help us design these sorts of things, where you can start to build resources. I could actually show you because I'm on my iPad, but I'll let the movie run. This is our first free book. You can go to the store and download it. It's free, so you really should download it. And here we did it as a concept book, actually showing, okay, you've got audio, you've got video, you've got some very simple interactions of the book. How hard can you make the interactions? How complex can you make them? And actually, in this book, which we released just a month or so ago, you can see all of the things we put into our concept demonstrator for the Game Center. And actually, they work beautifully well inside the book. The only thing it doesn't do is give you audio-video just yet. Here, when you're reading through a book about the moon, one of the things you want to do is read the papers that you cite. So actually, you can bring the papers inside the book. Why not go and get the paper, bring it inside the book, and open it up and read it? When you want to look at a mineral sample, you ought to be able to pick it up and move it. And actually, you can do that as well, because all of this is now simply HTML5 wrapped inside a page to make any illustration do whatever it is you want it to do. Very simple. Actually, turns out incredibly boring, but very powerful. Cool. I'm going much faster than I thought, so I think I might actually show you something else as well. So this piece is a piece I wanted to show you that... Actually, no, I'm going to come back. I'm going to stop, because I'm ahead. I'm going to show you one more book. I'll come back to that. I promise I'll come back to that. I'm going to go and show you another book. We got an awful lot of cool books. This is one that I set to my team last week. I said to my team last week, now I want you to design me a learning experience with no words in it, and it's got to be a book. That's the book I'm currently reading. I'll put that away. You can see the books that are on my shelf. I'm sure you've got lots of books on your shelves too. This one, I got lots of Jeremy Clarkson. You can see we got hundreds and hundreds of books that we've created as book-like experiences for our students and for others. This one is quite sweet. So this is one. We're trying to think of new designs for book-like experiences for our students that will wrap nicely and contain some smart things in them. Okay, this takes a while to load. Or dies. Is it up there? Okay, never do a live demo, Peter, because it's going to die. It's because I'm doing some dumb keynote thing, I think. It's because I completely revamped my machine and put boots back. Bear with me. It's one more demo. And then I'll be finished and we can have an early coffee. This is an experimental book we did about a week ago, and it's not going to work. Damn! I'm not going to show you that demo, because it's not going to work. Instead, I'll finish. Damn, that's so... I have a movie of it working, but now if I show you the movie, you just won't believe me. I wouldn't believe me. I won't show you that book. I'll try and get it working, maybe show you over coffee. So this, an example, you saw the picture of where we're trying to take concepts and from the concepts design resources around them, rather than think about the lecture at the core. This is an example of saying, actually, if you produce something really cool, like a nice film, how do you connect that together with sensible resources? And this is one of the advantages we have. We work with nice people like the BBC. So we said to the BBC, we'd really love to play with David Attenborough a bit. And I don't know if you guys get any of this. This is a series the BBC produced called Frozen Planet, where we work with them on. And the really cool thing about Frozen Planet is it raises some fabulous issues in ecology and the environment. And what this shows you is all of the connections that you have to make in order to design some learning experiences around a televisual experience. So at the heart, the TV series raises all of the issues. All of those are exposed in a public and open course, which is available in Moodle that anyone can then go to. The TV series sends you to the course if you're interested in. From the course, you can design samples of new material. You can design interactives of things, which will turn into apps in due course. In fact, all of those apps now fit inside books. And obviously, you can create books on it, so there's associated books with that work. To make it fun, one of the things we did to try and motivate learners who were actually interested in the series and were going to only head towards learning in a roundabout way, we even sent them a poster. So there's a great wall poster that you can get a hold of to illustrate the key concepts in the book. And eventually, you can come through and study at our university for 10 credit points on the topic of the work that David Attenborough is exposing there. Okay, so I'm actually done a little early, but I'm going to wind up. So I mistimed some of my demos, I think. So one of the things I'm arguing to you guys is that in a post-PC world, when the technology becomes invisible, actually a lot of the designs that you create for the PC have to change. They have to get much smaller, they have to get much more app-like, and you have to think much more carefully about how they fit with other things in the learning experiences that you design. Those are very good experience, and one of the things that I can show you there is that you possibly didn't notice it in the books and things that we went through them, but actually some of these instruments make very good science. So what we've found in distributing these things to our students is actually they can do better science using the virtual resource than they can do with the microscope resource. Yes, we want them to look down a microscope at some point, but what we really want them to do is understand the shape and the structure of the mineral. And they can do that much better by touching the screen to do it. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because some of my books have nice demo movies up, I'll leave that up at the end there. And, but I'll come to a final message then, which is to say, at the beginning, I kind of dismissed assessment, mentoring, content, and one other thing. What was the other thing I dismissed? I dismissed something else. Social. The realities of the social. And I shouldn't have dismissed them. That was a cheap trick to get you all annoyed, because I'm betting that's what you're going to be talking about for the next 2 days. Because actually they're incredibly important. Each of those 4 things is very important. Social, assessment, collaboration, mentoring, and high-quality content. And actually, if you're interested, the one thing that I'm going to be working on next year, which is the most important, is assessment. To be honest, if we can get online assessment working well, everything else falls away, because it's really, really hard. I think we can do everything else, but what we can't do is assessment. That really needs some research investment. And everything else is easy. Okay, I'm done. In case you have any questions, I'll just leave this movie playing. It hasn't got any sound, but it's some of our new books. Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Yes, you'll have to ask questions because I left plenty of time.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I think it's very interesting. I have a couple of questions there. I think one of the problems is all the experiences you show are very closely related to a very specific device, or at least close related to a mobile technology. I mean, how are you addressing this aspect of the fragmentation in the mobile technology? I mean, how will that deploy in an Android phone?
Okie dokie. So I gave you the example of the Indian community that's trying to help slum children. India has its own 2.2 Android tablet, which really, really sucks. It's really not very good. But it's actually good enough to do almost everything we want to do. It's really not very good. It's just really, really not very good. It's horrible. It really has terrible touch points. But it's only $50, and that's still too expensive. So you can't give that to every slum child, because it's $50 is a lot of money. But what you can do is you can give it to a group of about 10 of them and manage them in a school context and get them to create some stuff for it. And you can think about an economy where they can create things for it that they can give to each other and sell to each other. And you can think of all sorts of other things that will work with that. And yeah, it's not an iPad. The Apple's design is absolutely brilliant and beautiful, but it's expensive and complex. Underlying all of this is EPUB and HTML5. And HTML5 is just a bit of JavaScript, and even Android can run a bit of JavaScript. It doesn't run it very well. Most of these examples don't run terribly well, but they run good enough on a cheap piece of technology. So pretty much everything I've showed you works absolutely fine. Having a little bit of trouble with the audio-video stuff, of course.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I'm making the question, because that's also creating new aspect of authoring. I mean, that should. I mean, I know that Open University has a strong authoring tool for creating new material in multi-format aspect. I think it's even open.
Yes, it's open, free, you can have it.
Yeah, but I mean, how difficult is that to use for a normal teacher? I mean, average teacher. I mean, because this is one of the problems. One of the problems is we are going to Web 2.0, and now we are putting more and more requirement on the people who are producing the content. I mean, of course, this professionally designed content are quite expensive to produce, and not only to produce, but to maintain. I mean, this is one of the problems that we also had at our universities. Maybe you will get some money to create that good content, but you will never get money to maintain that content. So, I mean, how do you foresee this part of the authoring?
It's a genuine challenge. I wouldn't pretend it was easy. However, one of the problems Apple have, of course, is that they're outrageously expensive, but they focused on quality and the user experience. So if you can afford the iPad experience, I'd have to say, have a little look at the iBooks Author, because it's incredibly easy to use, actually. You can now do, it's really depressing, you can now do a lot of the things that we do professionally and using complex tools just in iBooks Author with some of their very simple plug-in widgets. It's really cool. If you haven't, have you tried? It's really cool.
It's closed and also...
It's not, yeah, it's Apple only.
I mean,
Hey, so...
I mean, I think that's create a new problem because it's closed and also create a very, very unfair aspect about the right of the content created with the tool.
Apple is so
I think this is far, far away from it should be. I mean, I'm sorry about that.
No, okay. So, but the answer to your question is, if you're prepared to go closed, Apple will solve the problem for you. So please God, somebody else in an open environment solve it too. It just goes to show. My point was not that you should buy an iPad. Although it's beautiful and you'll have a lovely time with it.
No, because I mean we are Android people, sorry.
No, sure, that's fine. But the point is, the problem is not insolvable. The problem is simply these are clever engineers sitting in California who've designed something that's really incredibly easy to use. Why not somebody build something open and give it away? That would be sweet. I would love that. That would be nice. But until such time, I will say that's a cool tool, and what I want to design comes out of that, and actually then I'll think about how to create it in other platforms. I will hit so half of the books you're seeing up there are pure EPUB 3. Now it happens that only the iPad plays EPUB 3 because Apple is so far ahead. But the point is it's an open standard. When someone writes a player for Android, it will play EPUB 3 and all of our books will work. But at this time, Apple is a few years ahead of them. Please God, catch up. And let's have some exciting new and open tools. For that time, personally, I do not begrudge Apple their genius. I think this is wonderful, because it lets me do the designs I want to do. And when someone gets a decent market going, and when someone does something sensible in Googleplex, then they'll have a cheap product that works in India for significantly less, I hope, than $50.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other comment?
I'd like to ask you a question, but a little bit far away from the book-centered discussion, which, by the way, was very nice. I enjoyed it a lot.
But a bit boring.
I would like to go back to that sentence you stated in which the future of higher education is in the social and open and for free. And I'd like you to give us your insight about the future of that higher education when you put together that high availability of this material, which is for free. And what are your thoughts about the type of world that stays ahead in terms of like accreditations, or in other words, you said, well, this is going to be for free. And then we're going to have all this technology that I agree with you, sooner or later will catch up and it'll be widely available at a decent price. Maybe it'll take longer than we would like to, but eventually it'll get there. So my question to you is, okay, so what is the rest of the puzzle, like higher ed? What's the future? Accreditation, short accreditation bonus that you give people? Do they pay for that? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so my thoughts are a little radical, I'd have to say. Most of the world can't afford to do what we do. I mean, that's true of lots of things we do, actually. Not just higher education. It's true of lots of the things we do in the West, the world can't afford us to be doing, by the way. So there's definitely some significant challenges coming for us. If you look at what universities do, the core business of any university is credit. You don't do anything else, actually. You like to do research, that's fun, good stuff. We all believe in it. I know I do. If I couldn't do research, I wouldn't be an academic. But your core business is not teaching students, it's badging students. You can teach students in order to do that, And the better you are at it, the happier you feel as a person. But it's not the critical part of your job. The critical part of your job is giving students credit and defending the value of that credit. And that's it, right? And that's, you spend a lot of money as a university on lots of other things and don't tend to think, in my view, enough about what you're doing as your core business, which is the credit piece. In fact, I could be even more radical if you'd like. I have to be even more radical. I'd have to say, well, most universities do. They're an agent for social control. Any sociologist will tell you this. I'm not a sociologist, I'm a psychologist, but I'm happy to talk to sociologists who will tell you you're an agent of social control. Your job is to take clever, young, middle-class people who are already very good at exams, hold on to them for long enough that you can be happy that they're at a certain grade, and because they're already good at doing exams, you give them exams and they do very well at it, and they move out into the world hardly changed at all. So that's very radical, and you might want to argue about that, because I imagine it's your job to do something else. The reason I work in my university is that my university's job is to take students who actually can't get into your universities and take them from probably having no qualifications at all. There's no entry qualifications to my university. From zero to the standard that I would say is equivalent to any badges you give out. Now that turns out to be very hard, and it's a very difficult business to be successful in. So again, we could have a good debate about the success of that business, but it's very important, actually. And the sort of thing that I do could be done worldwide. There's actually no rocket science in anything like that. It's not, and it's not that hard. It really is not that hard. I will predict that we'll have slum children in India doing a job of work that you'll be very proud of in these sorts of spaces. Now, it may take a little while, because the iPad Author is the right way to do it, and unfortunately, as you say, it isn't available on any other platform than a very expensive iPad right now. But all of that will change. That's just price. If we can have a discussion where we're just arguing about the price, it's over, right? The technology's over. We're just arguing about the price. So my answer to you was, universities are doomed. It's all very sad. Someone tweet that and I'll get into a lot of trouble. Universities are doomed because the core business needs to change. Actually, by the way, lots of us are doomed anyway economically, so let's have some fun while we're doing it. No one's going to let me get away with that, right? Come on.
Okay, one more question.
I think that one of the interesting things that you can do with digital information in books and things like that is to capture what students are doing. I wonder if you are trying to use some of this information to adapt the content to the user or something, or are you exploring something like that? Because it has to do with assessment and analytics in some sense, so...
Yes, so absolutely not, in a sense. So I don't do anything adaptive, except point users somewhere else. So that's the adaptivity I like is about a rich world of resources where you can head in another direction. I don't personally believe in learning styles. I think it's something you either believe in or you don't, and I don't believe it. I don't personally believe that adaptation makes sense. What does make sense is recommendation. Recommendation absolutely does make sense. So if you are stuck, I don't believe there's a right way for you to learn it. So I'll try something else. And actually, I can almost certainly try something random else. I believe. I believe the results are it's just as good to do something random as to do something designed to be adaptive. Now, most of people in my field would disagree with me on that, but it's my belief the evidence is extremely poor for learning style and extremely poor for even adaptive learning. But the one thing that I think there's very good evidence for is the nature of recommending. You can always recommend an alternative approach to people based on something that they've done. And that's one of the things that analytics will be very, very good for. Analytics is very good for saying, people who are successful in doing this found these 3 other things successful. Why don't you try one of them? They'll approach the problem potentially from a very different angle. One of the things that learners definitely do is get stuck. They get stuck on a critical problem, and because we usually design things in straight lines, They're the narrative pedagogies by which we write our books, or the narrative pedagogies by which we design our lectures or tell our stories. Users get stuck at a certain point, and what you have to do is shift that point by recommending alternative routes into that same issue. So don't believe in adaptivity, do believe in recommendation. I think they're quite different.
Well, maybe it was not adaptivity, the precise word, because when I think I'm reading a book, for example, I'm trying to remember the words that I've touched or the image that I've seen or wherever. Are you storing this kind of information?
Yes, so
okay.
Absolutely, yes, indeed, because we need it in order to be able to recommend anything to you. So all of
to show to the student, or
yeah, actually, that's another. In fact, that's probably the most powerful thing. The most powerful thing in analytics, which is a separate talk and very interesting, is drawing pictures of what the user has done for themselves. Because actually, one of the things that you're really good at is learning. Actually, you're really good at learning. People are great at learning. People are good at it. It's one of the things about our species. But what you're not good at is reflecting on the nature of what you're doing at all. People are very poor reflectors. They find it very hard to step outside of themselves and look back at themselves. And visualizations do that. Visualizations help to show you pictures of what you are. And one of the things we do is use analytics to draw lots of pictures to the student of what we think they are. I would never assert that those pictures are true, but they're useful, and that's good enough. They help you to step out and away, look at the thing that the shape of the thing that you were doing, and then do something else. So yeah, that's an incredibly important field in analytics, and that's finding ways to visualize things for the students. And we use a lot of these things also to visualize things for the teacher. It's like I said, you can plot where students are successful and not successful and do something about it as a teacher. Or as an administrator, you can plot where the course is going well and not going well, because people are failing and succeeding and doing some things, and they shoot off over there at a certain point. Those are very interesting, but none of them are as interesting as doing it for the learner themselves to show them the shape of what it is you think they've been doing, simply in order to allow them to reflect. Thank you. Good question. I like that. It's a good question.